live in the last 2 hours, last hour and a half actually, just with one slice of pizza and a whole bunch of chips inside me. I wonder if that's going to be a better share. Okay. Thanks to Michael for arranging tonight. Yeah, absolutely. Paul, you dropped the ball, okay? It's all right. He's handing it out. Paul's like, I don't even know you shul anymore. What do you want from me? It's live. It's all right. It's all right.
Members only.
That's not members. Oh, well, no, you're welcome. You guys are all welcome. It's great. I'm really happy that we've been able to start on this and to get back into it. So hopefully we'll do this more often. Different types of food, different people's houses. Nice to see you. You are?
Daniel Sandrovich.
Nice to meet you. I'm Rabbi Eisenberg. Thanks for joining us. Yeah. Okay, so I'd like to discuss with you an idea that I had about Channukah that came to me somehow between Sunday night and tonight. A few different things happened. So I'll tell you two things that happened to me on Sunday night, and then I want to open up to a question, and I want to get maybe into the idea of it. First thing is, sometimes certain people, and you really like them as people. And then I met this fellow on Sunday night, and I've known him for quite a few years already. And suddenly this girl that's next to him says, oh, by the way, when we get married in 2 months' time, and she starts talking about what's going to happen when they get married in 2 months' time. It's actually very cool. Did your dad tell you about that picture? Did he tell you about the painting? Maybe? No, I guess not. He would have told you. Well, I was at Jeremy Cooper's son's wedding. Yes? Yeah. So Jeremy Cooper's son's James got married on Sunday night. And they had something I've never seen before. They actually had an artist that was live. Alex Nadler's here. You wish he could have joined us. Hey, Alex, you missed the pizza. You can say whatever you want to. So this lady started drawing the chuppah before the chuppah started, and then when the chuppah started, she went around the chuppah taking pictures, and she spent the entire rest of the afternoon and most of the evening making a picture of this chuppah with a couple and everything. I'll show you a picture afterwards. I actually took a picture of it when it was completed, and it was just amazing. It was really just to watch how she put the couple in she took a picture of the couple, and she had her mobile phone, and she plugged in the card into the mobile phone, and she was copying all the details off the mobile phone. And then she had on the one side, that was the Kala had lost her mother, so they had her father and her auntie, and then on the side there was a painting of what her mother looked like on the day of her wedding. On the other side you had Jeremy and Jill, and you had the two grandfathers over there. It was really lifelike. It's funny, your dad was looking at the picture. He kept on coming back to the lady and going, you've done Jeremy's posture. And she fixed it because your dad was getting very upset about it. Anyway, so we're looking at this. We're looking at this painting, and we're having a really nice time discussing it, etc. And I'm talking to this guy, and somebody whom I know, young Jewish fellow, and he says, and suddenly this blonde girl standing next to him goes, yeah, when we get married in 2 months' time, that'd be an interesting one to have. So I haven't gotten a card from them. I pulled out the card and go, here, my present to you. They goes, what is it? Oh, wow, it's their card. Amazing. I walked away and I'm thinking to myself, when there's somebody whom I know that is getting married within the next 2 months, and I know they're not having an offer by us, and I know that I've not heard about this engagement, what does that tell me? They ain't Jewish, right? Well, not the one side that I know, but the other side. The girl's obviously not Jewish, because if she was Jewish, I would have known months ago that I gotten engaged. I would have in my diary, offer for family so-and-so. You'd have I'd know about it. So that's the first thing. And it was somehow it sat to me, maybe I don't think he might not have said anything, the truth is. He wasn't really forthcoming with information. But I guess she didn't realize I was a rabbi, and she just said, yeah, we're getting married in 2 months' time. And he's probably like, shh, not in front of my rabbi. How many times I have to tell you not to pull the McDonald's out when we're sitting together with a rabbi? So it was one of those very uncomfortable situations. Hey, Gary's here. Gary, we're missing you. Wasn't Gary Freeman supposed to come? Yeah, all right. Well, we're missing you here. Okay. So that was the first thing that happened. And then I sat down. I was sitting at the dinner next to this fellow who was trying to make conversation with me. Sometimes you're in the mood and sometimes you're not in the mood. I was like sort of half in the mood. I'd driven 4.5 hours just to get to this place. And there's this music blaring in the background. It's always funny to see, black people singing Mashiach, Mashiach. It's always, you get a band and you have like 3 black people in the band and all, Mashiach, Mashiach, Mashiach. And you're like, I don't rap. You don't do this stuff. This is just, it's a little bit of a crossover into another culture. So this music, and this guy's talking to me and he says to me, so Rabbi, let me ask you, what's the biggest problem your community faces? This is before I met the guy who was marrying out. What's the biggest problem your community faces going forward? So I've always maintained, by the way, what's the biggest problem? What's the biggest problem that faces Anglo Jewry? What would you say the biggest problem is? Pardon? It wasn't. I'm telling you, it wasn't even Jeremy Corbyn. I wish Jeremy Corbyn was the biggest problem that faced Anglo Jewry.
Intermarriage.
Pardon?
Intermarriage.
So intermarriage it's part of it, but intermarriage is only a symptom really of something else, which is what I want to really get to.
Assimilation.
Okay, assimilation works with intermarriage.
Lack of education.
Pardon, who said that? Apathy is really the main thing. Apathy then comes to lack of education, assimilation, intermarriage. All those are true, and they're major issues, but they start with apathy. People just, pardon?
It starts with skepticism.
I don't know that many people are that skeptical. They just couldn't care less. They're not. I know a lot of people. They really couldn't care. They're not skeptical about Judaism or not. They're just like, whatever. I don't know if someone didn't make this up. It's true. It's not true. Who cares? Just don't care. Right? I personally don't care. Not me personally, but they'll say I personally don't care about this whole thing.
I care, but I'm skeptical about it.
Pardon? Go on. So apathy is a real issue. So he says to me, so what's the biggest problem that's facing Anglo Jewry? He used to be a trustee or governor of JFS in London. So talking about a whole bunch of different things. It was an interesting conversation. He says, what's the biggest problem? I say apathy. I've always said apathy. I think that's the biggest problem. So somehow, like, I go out, I come in, the different things that are happening, and at one point or another, he turns to me and goes, okay, so Rabbi, let me ask you a question. Whose job is it to sort out the problems with apathy? Like, that's a good question. I thought about that. What do you think? Whose job is it? Who would you say, whose job is it to sort out this problem with apathy?
Chabad.
Chabad? Is only Chabad's problem?
No, because they...
The Chabad has taken Chabad takes a very, very strong, proactive view towards it.
With intermarriage specifically.
Yes.
Things that other people they just wouldn't get involved with them.
Right.
They just...
Well, Aish is very involved with that also. I think Aish very much, the intermarriage thing is like, Aish really, that's their big thing, that they want to get the next generation to marry Jewish. Yeah.
I theologically disagree on this because whenever Jews don't care, Hashem gives them something to care about.
Okay, well, so you can have Jeremy Corbyn, you can have bigger problems than that.
Exactly.
But that is true, but, there's still what to be said about, what do we, he's saying, before Hashem starts getting involved and punishing us, who here, is it the rabbis? Is it the teachers? Is it the parents? Is it the schools? I mean, who should be?
Everyone. So everyone can inspire the generation.
Right? You think it's there's a job that everybody has?
Correct.
I think actually the biggest problem we're facing is that we're not willing to change the improve fix. So we can actually get better, and I think that is something that is upon everybody in the community.
We can get better as far as what is concerned.
I think from being a participant, I think all the way up to the board, that if stuff we need to change to attract perhaps more youth or do things differently.
Right.
That we sometimes feel, yeah, we've always done it that way. Why would we?
Okay, that is true. Also, it's funny your wife's watching. She's next door. She's watching. Yeah. Yeah.
Say hello.
Say hello. Hi, Abby. Thanks for the use of your home. So I mean, that is true. I think change. I mean, Ian Creeks loves his joke about change. You guys know what Ian Creeks joke about? You know Ian Creeks joke about? Oh, come on. You've never heard that yet? How many shul members does it take to change a light bulb? Change? My grandmother donated that light bulb. Yeah. Now, there's a lot of cynicism in that joke, but there's probably a lot of truth in it. How much truth is there in that joke? A lot. Sadly, too much sometimes. So that's true. We as a community sometimes are too slow to change. When everything else around us is changing, we haven't changed yet. I spoke to somebody today. We were discussing a different thing. Wasn't talking so much about, communal, but I'm involved in a camp, and there are people. There's an elderly couple that's been cooking for that camp for the last 55 years, and they still can't understand and can't believe that nowadays generation doesn't want to use regular towels and only wants to use paper towels when drying their hands. They're like, we have all these towels, and this lady saying to me, I keep on telling my in-laws, nobody wants you for stunking towels. The first 5 people that dry their hands in a towel, it's barely dry, and then by the time you're number 10, your hands come out smelling worse and wet and more wet by the time you've used it. Nobody wants your towels. But they're living like in the 1960s when they started camp. Nobody had paper towels. So you'd cloth towels, terry cloth, whatever. So that's a small example. If we don't want to move on towels, we're not moving on the bigger things. And we're slow to respond when things are happening. But so whose job is it to then change? So who should sort of get with the program?
Well, leaders should inspire.
Definitely. So we can say definitely leaders have very much a front runner role to be taken in this. But who else?
So everyone, you've got to have a coordinated approach, and everyone has to buy into it. Because if you've got one break in the chain, the whole thing cracks. So it goes from education, so parents needed to buy in. When I went to school, I went from one school to another school. And the apathy in one school was very different to the other. Yeah. And it has to be coordinated.
Yeah, it does have to be coordinated because and I think everybody has to be singing. Pardon the wrong expression at this point in the year, but everyone needs to be singing from the same hymn sheet. Yeah,
teachers.
So teachers as well.
School teachers. I'm talking from a younger age. You need that inspiration, to kind of build that love and fun. Side of it. So
certain schools. So certain schools do that very well, but in other schools, there's only a limit as to how far they can take it before the parents start saying, "Hey, you're intruding." Yeah, I'm sure as a governor, there are certain things you might want to do in school that you probably can't do.
Well, there's a number of things. Children will go through school. I heard a story of a child that went through school who his only Seder was the mock Seder at school, and never have a Seder at home.
Right.
So yes, he has
learned about
it, had been involved in it at school, but then home it just finished. There was no more. That was his.
I think Sammy Morim said to me, he was surprised how many people just go off to it's Easter and Pesach always together. And so he said he had a whole bunch of people that their parents were just going, Gran Canaria, Tenerife, Algarve. That's where they were going for Pesach. Taking matzah, matzah. We're taking bathing suits, swimming trunks. Who's taking matzah to these places? Right. Just totally out.
I was in school the other day and was showing some people around, and there was a child there who turned around to the teacher and said, "Oh, I'm seeing Father Christmas on Sunday."
All right, but he might.
Yeah. So it's,
Yeah.
But that's just impromptu.
That's impromptu. That's this is where we're at, whether they like it or not. And the problem is to then turn around and say, because I know a lot of the teachers in King David, to say they're non-inspirational. A lot of them are inspirational. They're very good.
It's the parents.
So then the parents. So you start to say, well, we'll blame the teachers, we'll blame the community leaders, and then you have the parents that become part of this calculation as well.
Parents need inspiring.
Okay, but a lot of the parents don't want inspiring. A lot of parents, you say to them, I mean, there's some people that I know with seed, with Asia, some people out there that are actively, proactively approaching people and saying, come, we'll teach you about Judaism, we'll tell you about what Judaism has to offer you in the 21st century. And coming back to what Eric said, if we take a more, how would we say it, user-friendly approach towards these things, I think Aish does it very well. I think Seed also does it very well. So if you come to someone, I know with Seed, I remember when my wife used to give shiurim sometimes for Seed. If you came to someone and says, this Thursday we have a shiur, would you like to come? That's like, no, I got either an ingrown toenail or root canal that I'd rather have done before coming to your shiur. Yeah? If you come to someone, we're having a parenting course based on ancient wisdom. Oh, okay. Or we're talking about how to connect with your kids, or how to connect better with your spouse. You can add as much Torah as you want to once you get the people through the door. But if it's packaged as parenting versus packaged as shiur, you have very, very different responses. I even once read about, there was a professor at, I think it was Bar Ilan or Tel Aviv, one of the universities, that was giving a course on Pirkei Avos. But he knew whenever he gave a course on Pirkei Avos, on ethics of our fathers, nobody came. So he said ancient Chinese wisdom. The place was packed. They loved it. On the last day of the course, he said, by the way, we've been learning from Pirkei Avos now for the last semester. They all went crazy. How dare you, religious coercion, etc., etc. But last week, everybody thought it was great. Yeah, until you told me this was Torah. No, I don't want to have anything to do with it. So there's a preconceived notion, I don't really want it. There is the changing of realizing that we need to do things differently. I had a conversation with people in Shul. I said, why does everybody use Art Scroll? Why doesn't anybody use the singers? I said, because Art Scroll in 1980 or 1990 came out with a siddur that was friendly, that didn't say boweth and cometh, that actually had words in English that people would be able to read, and that had a better layout. And by the time the singers woke up and Chief Rabbi Sachs put out a new siddur in 2010 or something, for 25 years, the entire United Synagogue have been using Art Scroll siddur because it's so much more user-friendly. Now you have to start convincing me, but we have a Chief Rabbi siddur. I've been using the Art Scroll for 20 years. Why should I change? You're behind. You lost out on that user interface that other people cashed in on, quite literally in this instance, to say, we have something that we like to use that makes it easier for us to use it. So it's a big question, this idea, but I wanted to just connect it with an idea that I had on Channukah, that maybe I've had this idea in different incarnations in different ways before, but this is how I thought about it this time around. There are really two miracles that happen on Channukah. Two main miracles, and they're actually mentioned in two different places. That two of the different miracles are given different levels of importance. So you have an Al Hanisim. During the prayers, Al Hanisim, what's the main miracle that we herald about in Al Hanisim? Winning the war. Yeah, you go through Al Hanisim, right, etc. The days Matisyahu, the son of Yochanan, who was a Kohen Gadol, Chashmonai, when the kingdom of Yavin stood up, to get people to beget the Torah. You and your great mercy stood for them in the time of their tzaros. You fought the battle. The judgment that they no kindness in Gossam. You gave the Gibarim the strong ones in the hand of the weak ones. The many in the hand of few. Etc., etc. And at the end we say, and by the way, at the end of everything, after they won the war, they came into the base of Mikdash and they cleaned it out. They lit candles. We don't even say that the candles lit for 8 days. They lit candles. They came in. They cleared up the base of Mikdash of the candles. And then they set aside these 8 days of Hanukkah to give praise to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's it. That's all we speak about on Hanukkah. It's only the miracle of the war. If you look in the Gemara has a very different view. The Gemara says, "My Hanukkah. What's Hanukkah? Why do we celebrate Hanukkah?" So the Torah tells us that. So the Gemara says, when the Malchus Hashmonai had they were being oppressed, and finally the Jewish people were able to overpower the Greeks. They made their way into the Beis Hamikdash, and they were looking for oil, and there was no oil that they could find because all the oil had been contaminated. Until they found that one flask of oil, and they used a flask of oil to light one night, and it lit for 8 nights, and then afterwards they were able to make new oil, and that's the miracle of Channukah. So what is the miracle of Channukah? Let's really try and understand it. Is the miracle of Channukah the miracle of the war, or is the miracle of Channukah the miracle of the candlelight? And quite honestly, if I ask you a question, the candlelight miracle is a big miracle, but would you really have thought that miracle is big enough to say, you know what, for 8 days, we're going to have this holiday for posterity? Why? We lit the candles, and the candles stayed lit for 8 days straight. Whoop-de-doo. I mean, looking through Jewish history, considering all the different miracles, you hear things that happen, crazy things that happen in the Holocaust, you hear amazing stories that happen throughout history, and then you hear the story about the Hanukkah candles. All right, it's nice. I'm not downplaying the miracle, but I could have thought of much greater miracles, and yet we seem to make this big fuss of this miracle. So why make such a big fuss of the miracle of Hanukkah when really, on balance, it's not such an amazing miracle? Yeah, I mean, the Gemara even says, the Gemara tells a story that, can't remember, it was the daughter of Chanina Mendoza that lit Shabbos candles once. She made a mistake, and she lit Shabbos candles with vinegar instead of lighting it with oil. She came to her father and says, oh no, I lit the candles and I lit them with vinegar. What do I do now? And he said, oh, it's no problem. Says whoever, God created the properties that oil could burn, so you can make the vinegar have the same properties, even though it normally doesn't. And it did, and it burned, finished. I burned all of it. So, I mean, he was able to do that. So you see it happen in other times. We're going to make a special Yom Tov for Chanina Mendoza. So there seems to be something important that's going on over here with these candles, that these candles symbolize, and that the battle symbolizes, and the synergy between the two of them symbolize something for us that we need to take from it. So my thought was the following, and again, welcome to take any comments or any extra thoughts on this one as well. The miracle of the candles needs to be taken in context together with the miracle of the battle. The Jews didn't really stand a chance in this war. They didn't. They were less, they weren't as well trained. I mean, you think back, 6-Day War, War of Independence, Yom Kippur War. There were times where the Jewish people all around the world really felt that was it. That was it for our brothers in Eretz Yisrael. Chas v'shalom 1,000,000 times over. Nowadays, we've gotten to the point where we feel like, oh, if we went into Gaza, we could obliterate Gaza in one day if we wanted to. We just don't want to, because then we'll have to rebuild it and spend a fortune on it, and the whole world will be on our back. So we don't. But we could. And we're the Goliath now, and the Gazans have become the Davids. As opposed to, as it was originally, as it stood, the Israeli army in 1948, what do they have? Some old guns they got off that they bought on the second-hand market and the black market that had to be smuggled into the country, making sure that the British didn't find them. What did we have? Nothing, and yet we won. That was a massive miracle. That wasn't it? Pardon?
We have God.
We did have God on our side. If we didn't have God on our side, there was no question. I mean, they tell the story. I'm sure you've heard this before. That they tell the story that they have a computer in West Point that reenacts sort of through a computer software all the different great battles. And they said every battle in history, sometimes Napoleon wins, and sometimes Duke of was it Nelson? Whatever they did, sometimes that one. There's only one war that basically never works out correctly. The 6-Day War, the Jews always get obliterated on the computer system, and yet we won. I said that the fact that we won was just beyond. Again, because it was the hand of God. And to beat out an army that was, however many times as great, how many times in strength as that little Jewish army, in 6 days, for them to capitulate, for Israel to double in size almost, it was unheard of. I mean, the miracles, and people say that after the 6-Day War, it was just a very, very different scenario. And the world was in awe, and people were starting to become more religious. They said, we saw God. We thought it was finished. Even people that weren't religious says, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I must believe in God. I have to. There was no other way. So the war was this tremendous miracle. And then after that tremendous miracle, you then have that small miracle, much more in private. You have the miracle of the candles. how did they deserve the miracle of the candles? How did they merit this miracle of the candles? The miracle of the candles comes because they were willing to fight the battle, because they were willing to fight the war. Once they were willing to fight the war, they're willing to put themselves out there and to fight the battle like that. God says, you're willing to fight, I'm on your side. And not only am I on your side, you'll light the candles, they'll just keep going. And so therefore, I think in looking at this now, from our perspective, that's really I think to me, the lesson of Hanukkah is not that the candles themselves, the miracle is so great. It's because the Jewish people were willing to fight for it. And then went and lit those candles took on a new symbolism. And therefore Hashem says, you fight for something, even a tiny little light that nobody gets to see from one day to the next, 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, the light grows. You have to be willing to fight for it. And
they don't light all 7 though.
Well, they lit all 7. I'm saying in our instance, they lit all 7, and the 7 lit throughout the entire Hanukkah. That is correct. It wouldn't be correct for me to say they lit 1, then 2, then 3. So there was one day and another day and another day. We light one after the other to show that light gets greater, it gets bigger. We have more and more light as we go along. And I think this is really where we stand with this whole discussion, is that if you look back even one generation ago, it was a lot less acceptable, for example, to marry out. And parents used to say, you do whatever you want to, you eat whatever you want to, you do whatever you want, etc., etc., but you better marry Jewish. And everybody knew you were going to marry a Jew. You had to. There was no way. And your parents really, so much so that in the old days, people used to sit shiva. Somebody married out, people sat shiva for their child. That was it. You were finished. And kids knew this was a red line that we wouldn't cross. And this was something that we had fought for. This is something that was just non-negotiable. And so it was non-negotiable. And so therefore that light existed because it was fought for. We fought for this light. The light existed and it perpetuated itself. And we got to a point where we stopped fighting about certain things. And one of those things is, sadly, intermarriage. There are many other ones. But intermarriage, again and again, I see, sadly, go on Facebook, and you see pictures of a happy wedding. The parents are there, the grandparents are there. I've had uncles who've said to me, I'm going to such and such a wedding. It's going to be in such and such a place. It wasn't even locally here. It was marrying, I can't remember, it was a Russian girl, a Polish girl, whatever it is. Marrying a foreign girl in a non-Jewish ceremony, a treifa do in a treifa country. And this guy said, I have to go. This fellow in shul told me, I have to go to this wedding. I said, why do you have to go? He says, if I don't go, I'm going to rock the entire family is going to be so upset with me. I have to be there. I can't not go. And so he went. Look, what was I going to say? He shouldn't go. Can't tell me he should fall out with his entire family on this one. But you see the change. The shift has become the other way around. You as the uncle, big deal, so the uncle didn't go, right? No, you as the uncle, if you don't come and you don't celebrate with the rest of us, the fact that my Jewish son is marrying this non-Jewish girl in a non-Jewish ceremony in a church in the middle of Poland, you're ripping our family apart. You're ripping our family apart. You are the Russia here. Sometimes you look back and like, me? What did I do wrong? I'm just standing up for our values that have been our values for the last 3,000 years. What are we doing? But we've changed. That battle, people are stopping to fight that battle. And when people stop fighting the battle, that light that has lit for so many years starts to dim. It's when you're willing to fight the battle that the miracle of the candle happens. You're willing to fight, you say, against all odds. If you will fight against assimilation, God says, I will keep you as a Jewish people. I'll keep you alive no matter what. You're fighting against that. That little candle, you say, what big deal? It's a tiny little candle, it's a tiny little flame. What can it do? God says, I protect that flame, and that flame keeps burning and burning and burning. Even if it has no fuel, it keeps going. But as long as you're willing to fight the battle. When you fight the battle, I make sure that the candle stays lit. Once you stop fighting that battle, then I let go of that magical property of the candle. And once that magical property on the candle, God says, I'm not keeping this thing going if you're not fighting for it. So once God lets go of, when you let go of that, God lets go. And you know what happens to that candle? It'll go its course. So maybe take 1 generation, may take 2 generations, but that candle will extinguish. It'll go out because you stop fighting for it. That's what Channukah teaches us. Channukah is the idea that when you fight for something in Judaism, that thing you fight for becomes holy and somehow has a continuity no matter what. When you let go, then that fight just disappears. And once the fight disappears, the fuel disappears, and that candle will go out. So the question really is, and this is really where the battle, I guess, sorry, pardon the pun, but this is where the battleground is, with the apathy. When people become apathetic to Judaism, whether it is to assimilation, to Yiddishkeit in general, to mitzvahs, to Torah, whatever it is, and they stop being willing to fight for it, then one of a few things could happen. Either what Elvis said, God could send a reminder. Some reminders are like Jeremy Corbyn and just disappear. Some actually get voted in and it gets a lot more uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Baruch Hashem, we didn't end up in that situation. But there's all sorts of reminders. God says, you don't want to be reminded? At one point or another, I'm going to have to remind you. I don't want the flame to extinguish entirely. But for those people who've let go of the flame, it will start extinguishing, it will start going out until you're left with almost nothing. And so our battle for apathy is so important, and is specifically important to be discussed before Channukah, is because if you can understand and educate parents and families that this is something worth fighting for, and they will fight for it, then you stand a chance that the candle doesn't go out. If you lose that battle, and people say this is nothing worth fighting for, I don't understand why Jews went to their deaths in the gas chambers. Why did Jews not just convert in the Inquisition? The whole thing is just old-fashioned baloney. Rubbish. Who needs it? If that's where you're at, yeah. You watch how that just comes apart. Maybe in 1 generation, maybe in 2 generations, maybe in 3 generations. But then 3 generations you look, and suddenly all your kids are married out. Chas v'shalom, grandchildren are married out. Left with 0 Jewish progeny at all. Because you said, it's not worth it. I don't care. It's not something I'm willing to fight for. You don't want to fight for it? Fine. Don't fight it. Don't fight for it. Fine. Go ahead. See if it perpetuates itself. But I guarantee you that it won't. I guarantee you, God says I won't. Because the candles only burn once the battle has been fought. Without the battle, there's no candles. So our battle really is, I guess, to try to get to see people. And I guess it needs to be with the whole, I don't know if any one segment within the community. When he asked me that question, I was really stumped. Apathy. I don't know. Of course, I will take some of those. I'll take a share of the blame as a rabbi. Schools, educational, even things like Bnei Akiva, UJIA. I don't know. Maybe all of us together. But we need to create a generation that understands that we have something worth fighting for. Because once people have given up the drive to fight for it, with it, everything else will die and wither. And that's the idea of Channukah. So the question is a good question. It's a big question. I don't really have a good answer on that question. I know, and I take all your points that you made before, and I think they're all true and valid. But if we can't get people to start realizing they need to put in time, effort, money, and most importantly, energy in wanting this, God forbid you see many, many more lights that are going to go out. Okay, any points or questions before we end? Anybody, any thoughts?
I think
go on, Eric.
Mindset is also part of it. Because if I'm looking at on the other side of the spectrum,
yes,
where we see a lot of single girls, also in the from community,
yes,
non-from community, that are single at a very late age.
Yes,
everybody's getting married nowadays much later and later.
It's harder, and
it's getting much harder. And the case for people to settle down is going to be, much harder.
Okay, I think that's true, but I think that there are 2 points made over here. On the one hand, you're right that we need to create a situation that will make it easier for Jewish singles to meet other Jewish singles. I know there are some very good dating apps, and I know that I know this Jamie Cooper. He met his future wife, or his wife now, on the dating. I know other people that have met on dating apps, and they do a tremendous thing. But people feel that sometimes there's. I know a lot of people move down to London for it. They said there's just not enough girls here in Manchester. There's not. The pool's not big enough. I grew up with all of them. I went to KD with all of them. I don't want to marry any of them. That's it. Say I have 30, 40 girls. I know all of them. It's just not interesting. And I hear that. You can, if the pool is very, very small and you're not interested in any of the girls, it makes it very difficult. And you say, well, what do you want from a guy? Or what do you want from a girl? I went through all the Jewish guys. I know Jewish guys left. There's 30 of them here in Manchester, 40 of them in Manchester. I've met all of them. They're not interesting. Move on. So yeah, I think that might be part of it. If we created, I think somebody said to me that very few people, even very secular ones, go out there saying, I'm going to intermarry. I'm going to find a non-Jewish girl that I want to marry. Very, very few people say that. But they try the Jewish ones and it doesn't go, and then they're out in town one night having a drink, and they meet a girl and they have a dance with her and they have a good time talking to her, and slowly but surely things develop, and suddenly 3 years later they're in love, and they're like, okay, I'm not going to break this off for a religion that I don't really care much about because they're too far down the line. But how they end up meeting this girl, not because they actively went out searching for a non-Jewish girl to marry. It was just a circumstance. Now you might say, well, that circumstance shouldn't happen, because as soon as this non-Jewish girl came over, or he saw this girl, he shouldn't go over and say, hey, what's your name? You should just right away at that point say, I'm not marrying a non-Jewish girl, so why am I walking over to this non-Jewish girl, introducing myself, starting that conversation that obviously leads towards a relationship when I know I don't want a relationship with her? So then you're wrong. You shouldn't be doing that. But lots of guys are like, I'm 26, I'm 27, there's no girls around. If there's nobody else, let me be happy at least. So I take your point. We as a community maybe need to do more things to enable people to find Jewish spouses, because they're not looking actively to intermarry. Okay, I hear that.
The thing is that it's to do with effort as well. Life's become a lot easier in terms of things are at your fingertips.
Absolutely.
You go on the smartphone and get anything. And to actually engage with Judaism is hard work. You have to keep trying.
Yeah, but you can engage with Judaism on your smartphone as well. I mean, it's never been easier to hear tens of thousands of shiurim wherever you are.
There's hundreds of distractions.
That's true. So again, it's easier to get to Judaism, but again, you need to be interested actually in wanting to interact with Judaism. You can. Look, there are people who are sitting on their couches, not you guys, but sitting on their couches at home. Abby, yeah. 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 There are people that are saying that, and that's part of the reason I do these Facebook Live things. People say, well, if they don't come to the shul, why are you streaming it? I said, that's exactly why, because if I can't get them to come to shul, but I can maybe through this computer make my way into their home, which I could have never done previously. It's given me a tremendous tool to be able to interface and interact with people that I might have never. I was there. If you weren't at my shul, you weren't at my shul. So I had 3 people, 5 people, 7 people. If I had a really big shul, that was it. Then I got 12 people around the table, and I got four to seven people have been watching and listening to this throughout the entire time, and people coming in and people coming out. So it's amazing. And afterwards, people further down the line will still hear it afterwards. I gave a share in Torah Way this morning in MH. I once asked the guy who runs it, I said, how many people listen? He says, well, I'll put it this way. More people listen online than actually come in person. I say, yeah, but there's 30, 40 people there. He goes, well, there's more people listening online. So it means like, you've created this system where you can, if you want to. But you're right, there's very little, and again, if there's little drive, even though it's easy to get to it, people won't do it. So you got to create the want or need in an individual that they should want to actually interface with it. But as you said, also they have all these different things that are really getting their attention. Even here, I mean, it's great that very few people. I've been seeing people people haven't been texting, etc. But I've been to Shurim where half the time people are constantly texting. You're talking to half the crowd, the other half the crowd is busy on their phones. You're constantly getting other messages. So yeah, things are constantly pulling at you. So it's also part of it. What else? Right.
The amazing shul service where you come into the shul and it takes 30 minutes to take a Torah scroll out with a long chazonas. By the time you finish that davening, you're like, why am I still here?
Okay, so that's part of that's an argument that's ongoing where some people say the davening takes too long, it should be less chazonas. Some people say this is important because it gives people a feeling of, different people take it differently. Yeah, pardon?
Yeah.
No, I enjoy it.
Yeah, there are people that enjoy it. There are people that say this is too long. And we've had it. You won't be the first, the last two people in the shul to have different, opinions about how it should be done. So some people say, well, more interaction. Other people say, well, it's nice that the chazan does a few pieces of chazanos once in a while. And, the pomp and ceremony we take out the Sefer Torah adds to the grandeur of the Sefer Torah when it comes out. That's one way. Other people say, come on, get moving. Come on, okay. Bara Shanasan Tara. Again, Bara, how many times you want to say the same thing again? Get moving. Let's get the Sefer Torah out. Have you ever been to a frum shul? You know how long it takes out in very frum shuls to take out the Sefer Torah? 30 seconds. In, out. The whole thing, quick. Boom.
I was thinking holidays.
Pardon?
Not on holidays.
Not holidays.
Not on holidays.
No, forget about holidays. You go to Shar Mordechai, you go to Beis Mordechai. You'll see the Hatzah Sefer Torah, taking the Sefer Torah out of the ark, takes 30 seconds from beginning to end. Yeah, and he's walking. Off he goes. They're different ways of doing things. So some people that doesn't speak to them, some people speaks to them. So what the solution is, some say the solution is different services under the same roof. Others say, no, well, don't split everybody up. Try to find a way to get everybody to do everything together. There are there's the different perspectives on that. But there's enough shuls out there also so that if you feel it's too slow, it's too this, it's too that, there's almost every flavor out there if you really, really wanted to find a shul that has your...
The youth minions are right.
Pardon?
Youth minion.
Okay, you like the youth minion, that's great. Other people find the youth minion too quick. Different people have different ways that they look at different minyanim. So again, but that's what I said. They're horses for courses. Baruch Hashem, we live in a town where there's so many minyanim. Too many sometimes, yeah. You can choose really the kind of minyan that you want. Slow, fast, the kind of people that you want there. Too much talking, too little talking, just the right amount of talking. And everybody has a different barometer, what's called the right amount of talking. And the right kind of people to talk to, where you want to sit. There's space, I want to sit in the business area. I don't really want to sit in the sports area. I'm not so into sports. I'm some of the guys that are talking about how the stocks are going. You'll find that. Pardon?
But with credit to Shrubs and yourself, you've built an infrastructure there that you've got 3-4 different children's services.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are coming who necessarily wouldn't be coming to shul on a Shabbos.
Yes.
The kids are seeing now that getting the education in schools.
Yes.
And then they want to bring them, they feel guilty that they're coming home, they're talking about it.
Yeah.
So they say, okay, fine.
Well, I hope people don't come because of guilt, but it could be they come because of guilt. But I think within our children's services, there is a downside also, which is that people come. Some people come for children's services only. We don't see them in shul at all. They come literally at 11:10, go straight past the shul into the children's services. And, as an adult, dingling the Torah talks doesn't do it. Yeah. It's great for your 2-year-old, for your 3-year-old, for your 4-year-old. But, as an adult, maybe you should be davening also. And the other thing is you get, okay. The problem is, and the challenge is, taking people that come to the youth minion, not to the youth minion, sorry, youth minion is not an issue, sorry. Taking people that come to the children's services and making them graduate to start coming to the davening also. And even some people coming to the davening, how do you graduate them into being people that start maybe coming once or twice during the week for something?
When the kids grow up.
Pardon?
When the kids grow up.
Yeah.
People just won't come anymore.
That's right. Because at one point, we have people like that. They came religiously with their kids until they were 7, 8, 9. And then when the kids, I've had this conversation with a lady, and she says, I don't know why my kid suddenly stopped wanting to come to shul. I said, what did he do? He said, well, as a kid, he loved singing Anam Smiris. I said, yeah, but your kid is 14 now, and Anam Smiris is not cool anymore. Yeah. So when you were 8 or 10, it was great, and you stood up and you sang Anam Smiris, and the whole shul went shkach, and and your grandpa was really, really proud of you, and it was amazing. But now you're 14, and you're like, this is so uncool. And there's no reason for me to come. And then you as a parent say, well, why is my kid not coming anymore? It's because he's got no reason to come anymore. And if the only reason you're coming to shul is because your kid wants to come to shul, and your kid doesn't want to come to shul anymore, so you don't want to come to shul anymore. I'm not going to this for myself. My kid likes the children's service. Like, great. Once he stops liking the children's services, I got no reason to come either. So the challenge really is to take the people that want to come now for children's services and to be able to move them forward, not the kids only, because the kids are moving forward, but to move the parents that step forward for them to say, I also want to be involved in a certain way. I want more, and my kids want more. I'm doing more for my kids. What am I doing for myself? What am I doing for my community?
Have you found that there's a certain age, a point where kids obviously they're not kids anymore, they're kind of like young adults. Is there a point of where they decide, well, I've got bar mitzvah now, or bat mitzvah, that's it now, I don't need to come back anymore?
So it depends.
Is there normally a point of...
I mean, there was a point, and the point has moved because we have Mikey and Rivka, so they're creating better programs for the older kids, so the kids are staying for longer. Right? So when we didn't have Mikey and Rivka, we had Sammy Morim. When he was on, it was great. A lot more people came. When he wasn't on, it wasn't as exciting. He was very, very good, Sammy Morim. But you have the tiny tot service, which is great and amazing. The kids love coming out. And maybe the service after that, from year 1 to year 3, I think is quite good also. And then beyond that, when you move to year 4 to year 6, you're already dealing with kids that are a little bit older. And unless you give them more, if it's just a parent that's running that service, many times the parent just doesn't have the tools necessary to keep those kids engaged, involved, and they're like, they come out and like, Daddy, this is so boring, I don't want to go again. After 1 week or 2 weeks, they stop wanting to come to this. And once they stop wanting to come to this, the parents are like, well, if you don't want to come, I'm definitely not going for myself. And then that's over. So now we have Mikey and Rivka, they're doing better programming for the kids, and so that we have Gosh and Bosch, and they're doing programming during the week, and so even post-bar mitzvah boys and post-bat mitzvah girls are being involved. So we have that at a later stage, but we still haven't caught the parents. So you might have been able to keep the kids in for longer, so the kids haven't only come. And at one point or another, kids are able to come to shul by themselves. So the kid says, I'm going to shul. I'm like, well, you're 11 years old. Walk to your shul on your own. I'm turning over my bed and going back to sleep.
Would you say the majority of kids nowadays are becoming more frum as opposed to the parents that are maybe less frum than?
I wouldn't say that. No, I think we speak about the polarization. We speak about that kids are either becoming more from than their parents or less from their parents. Very few kids are staying exactly where their parents are. It is possible, but it doesn't happen so often. In general, either kids will take on more and then move a bit more to the right, or they'll take on less and then move a bit more to the left. And sometimes the parents are quite left already, so another step to the left is almost a step off the cliff because you're almost there. But there are very few. I wouldn't say that kids are necessarily always moving to the right, in the right environment, in the right schools, et cetera, with the right kind of influences, they can and might move to the right.
There's more distractions nowadays as opposed to.
No, it's just a question of It's a question of what the parents want for their kids. So some parents choose schools that are maybe a step up from what they are because they want the kids to be more than they are. Other parents will choose schools that are more or less on par of who they are, maybe even a step down from where they are. And the school that you choose for your kids will have a lot to do with where your kid is going to end up and what your kid is going to, and the direction and the arrow that you set for your kid. So if you set your kid an arrow, even if the incline is very, very, you'll see you're 100 yards higher up. You know, you don't have to be climbing this way, you can be climbing this way, but even if you're climbing this way, it just takes longer, but you are climbing. And the other way around also, if you're ever so slightly on a decline, just get further down the line, suddenly you're like that far apart.
I suppose for like someone like myself who's about to, but it's hard to kind of, you want to, even though I study goes to Jewish school,
yes,
you want to make sure that kids that are going to a Jewish school from such a young age still continue to be inspired, even though I do what I can at home.
Yes.
But there'll be a point where they will probably have a stronger foundation than what I have in terms of knowledge, because obviously I didn't have that. So I suppose it's just making sure that they continue to progress as opposed to stopping and then get distracted and then, you see what I mean?
Yeah, okay, so I think the continual progression has to do with your continuously progressing. If they see dad and mommy are constantly growing, then they'll want to grow. And it has to do with the influences that they have in school. There's no one single influence. Yeah, you put it all together.
It's not a multifaceted approach with
yes.
the schools, the shuls, the youth groups, the seeds, the ashes.
Yeah. We've had that conversation before, haven't we? About the multifaceted approach.
Yeah.
That we should try to like integrate.
Correct. There should be a network.
Yeah.
Where you're able to bring everything together.
Yeah, well, with coming from you as a governor of a school that takes GDPR very seriously, this is going to make things very complicated.
No,
I'm just kidding with you. Just kidding.
It's like,
do you know, it would, but do you not think it would make it complicated to start on?
But you know,
I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I'm saying that you'll have to figure out the legalities that.
If you came into, if not you put any,
whatever,
the Rabbonim of the Manchester community, if they all came into the room, would they all know which kids in the school were members?
I'd say I'd know probably 70%. You know, we get to see a lot of our kids, but there are plenty of kids that I never get to see.
Yeah.
And you know, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur was amazing. That how many kids there were. Who walked in? Was anything going to the lunch on Yom Kippur for the kids? Yeah. That was just. I mean, yeah. But beyond that, it was just there were just so many people that the place was just teeming with kids and young people. I don't know.
It was free food. It wasn't actually free food.
It was pre-ordered.
It was pre-ordered. I mean, it was amazing that when your wife and Janine, one or two others did that.
Isn't like from community though on the rise?
The From community
people now than they have ever been.
Yeah, the From community is on the rise, but the question is, I am not dealing so much with the From community. I mean, I'm involved very much in the From community also, but the From community
is that not showing that actually maybe it's working?
It is working in the From community, but the question is, I'm looking at my community and saying just because the From community is on the rise, they have tremendous birth rates. They have a tremendous rate of people buying in. They also have a rate of attrition, but it's not so high. But they have a tremendous buy-in from their people. But I can't sit in my community and go, you know, the Jewish community is doing well because look how many From kids there are. Because I look at my community and I say, that's not what I see in my community. Okay, Baruch Hashem, our community has really become a lot stronger over the years. It's a very different community than it was when we came here 9 years ago, when we started our job 9 years ago. Baruch Hashem, I mean, I look around, we didn't have people your age. We just about had people your age, you know, and there was a small group with young parents that had kids. The idea that we could have 150 kids in our shul on Yom Kippur was beyond, I think, my wildest imagination. Definitely in under a decade for sure. You know, the fact that it's grown to what it has is just beyond. But I can't look at the From community and pat myself on the back and say, well, the Jewish community is doing well. That sector of the Jewish community is doing well. But there are other sectors of the Jewish community that need a lot of work and that need further injection of inspiration, caring, whatever else it is, because otherwise you lose that part of the community. So you can't say, well, we will survive. It's not about saying, well, as a general, as a people, we will survive. So who cares about the people that drop off on the other end?
It's a different type of inspiration, isn't it? Because you can be inspirational, but the people that you're probably referring to there have heard all that, have seen all that. They need something else.
They do need something else. Yeah. So the From community, look, the From community has its own issues. They do have their own issues, especially, you know, where it comes to inspiration, it comes to people feeling that they have choices that they can make that aren't being made There's a lot of things that, it's not a panacea, the Frum community. There are plenty of issues there also. But
I mean, going back to the point you were saying about years ago, like nobody ever married. It was like it's the one thing.
Not nobody, but yeah, it was very, very much so. Yeah,
you never did.
Yes.
That's probably still. You could argue that is true within the ultra Frum community. Even those that don't believe, they're just too frightened to go away from it, completely ostracized.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is why they don't. Which is probably.
In that community, even if you don't marry out, even if you just walk away from almost everything, very often you're ostracized like that also. Mm-hmm. So if you decide I'm not so Frum anymore, so I'm not wearing the black and the white, and I'm put on jeans and I put on a knitted kippah, and I start davening in steam cord instead of davening in MH, that could ostracize you from a lot of your friends. Even though you said, but I'm still religious. I've not dropped off entirely. So some people that's dropped off too far. Yeah. So there is that issue, but they'll only oftentimes drop off up to that, but they'll still try to marry Jewish. Those that drop off badly, drop off really, really badly. I don't know how many of you know, but if you know some of the people that have become irreligious from the religious community, the anger and pardon?
It's openly.
Yeah, because they are very, very angry. No, but they are very angry and they want to show everybody, I don't care and I'm going to show you all I can do whatever I want to. And, none of you is going to tell me what to do. Yeah. Right. Thanks very much. Appreciate your time. Thank you, Michael. Let's do this again.
Cheers, Casper.